August 26th, 2024. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Don't Panic, the technology podcast that when you mess with the best... Wow, what's the quote? Damn it, I should have had it up. When you mess with the best, you die like the rest. I'm Sean Jennings, joined by our own Zero Coolant Acid Burn. It's Colby Rabideau and Dan Miller. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello, Sean.
What's up?
What is up, indeed?
Yeah, we were talking before. My windshield got shattered, so dealing with that.
But not your spirit.
Not my spirit, not yet. It's hanging in there. It's like the laminated glass. It's got a bunch of cracks in it, but it's still. Safelite says there's nothing for them to do.
You have a safety spirit.
Yeah.
That actually, I'll tell an incredibly quick anecdote, and he actually watches the show, so he might see this. My dad had his car broken into at a pickleball tournament he was at, and they broke his back windshield, and he went to Safelite to have the replacement, and they asked him, "Oh, do you have privacy glass?" And he did not know what that meant. So he said, "Yeah, I have safety privacy glass, sure." And so they put in a very dark window on the back of his car, so all the other windows are very light except for that one, which is very funny. So they are going to fix it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Is it allowed for people to have are there any restrictions about how tinted your windows can be?
Yes, it's actually, police have a special machine they can put on, and it will test the tint, and you can get a ticket for having a vehicle that's too darkly tinted. It does vary by state, though.
Too tinted. Follow-up question: if you live in a state that allows more tint and you drive to a state that allows less tint, is there some sort of grace period, or is it just illegal?
I always wondered the same thing. Did you know that in like 40 to 45 U.S. states, you're required to carry proof of insurance in the vehicle? Massachusetts is not one of them.
Oh.
And so I do carry proof of insurance in my vehicle. But you're right, Colby. I do wonder if I were to drive to another state that does require it, could I get a ticket, even though it's not that way in my home state? I actually don't know.
It seems like an interstate commerce clause question.
Yeah, it sounds like something a lunatic would try to sue over via the Constitution and, infringing on my rights.
Right.
Yeah.
My rights as a Massachusetts person.
Speaking of Don't Panic-esque fun fact, I learned a good one yesterday or the day before. Did you know that there is a U.S. state which is technically both, this one makes sense, the westernmost and northernmost state, but also it is the westernmost, northernmost, and easternmost state, because the little tail of Alaska points out across the meridian, and so it's technically eastern there. So Alaska holds all of the records except for Florida or Texas maybe is the southernmost state.
Florida, the Florida Keys, I believe, is the southernmost point.
Because you get the curve. Which one's actually further south?
Well, that's if you believe the Earth is round.
Well, it's not a given.
Let's just be honest.
Tricky.
Fun fact. Yeah. Colby and Laura came to visit in Seattle.
I think I'm almost recovered from the jet lag. Almost.
Yeah, luckily I didn't have any jet lag. Did we do anything tech related at all? I think we thoroughly explored the outdoors. We spent a lot of time on paddleboards. We spent a lot of time on bikes. There is a lot of bike technology that after having biked for a couple hours, I wish I had known about and purchased.
Like pads.
Yeah. So, Sean, if you ever see I don't know if these people exist in Massachusetts, but they must. The people, they look like Lance Armstrong. They've got like the logos. They've got the glasses.
Yeah, but they bike in the middle of nowhere here, which is always strange to me.
Well, that's probably because there's no cars.
Well, but that's the problem. There are cars on roads that don't have a median.
Yeah.
But yes.
There's no shoulder.
Yeah. And so those things are like pull-up onesies, is my understanding. And one of the benefits that they prefer to you or confer onto you is padded adult diapers, essentially. And I think another thing I learned recently, Colby, because we were out with my uncle walking around, and we saw some bike people, and their seats looked much more comfortable than our seats. And you probably know this because Colby knows things about bikes. My guess is are the road bikes just like as light as possible, so they want absolutely no cushion on the seat or something.
I think that's true. Like the more racing your bike, the more likely it is to have, be carbon fiber or something like, ultra.
Well, it's performance enhancing, right? I mean, if you've got a comfortable ass, you're going to perform better. You got to level the playing field.
Sure,
that's
true.
I see. I see. I would agree with you. I would have performed a lot better if my ass had been more comfortable. What was the other thing I was going to say? I don't remember. But yes, next time I would get one of those. Oh yeah, right. My ass was hurting in places I did not know was possible. And then when I was hanging out with my cousins, who are all medical students, they were telling me that people do get injured this way, and you can get this. I forget what it is a disease of something that is something that people get from riding bikes and from childbirth, to give you some idea of the area that is impacted in this thing. And I was like, yeah, okay. So definitely the padded pants next time. And I'm going to try to opt for a comfier seat.
Wait, what's the disease?
I don't remember what it's called. I just remember, picture the Venn diagram of areas of your body that are impacted from those two activities, and you can imagine what the disease is, I think.
Wow.
Sean, based on the clicking, I imagine you're Googling this right now.
That's right, Dan. As always, making my Google search history. Really interesting. I Googled bike riding ass injuries. Maybe that'll be the episode title. I'm not sure. But I can't. It turns out a lot of people's butts hurt when they ride a bicycle. I can tell you that. But I can't find the medical term. Saddle sore. How to treat saddle sores.
That sounds like something we experience.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's an awesome. I will paste this into the
a good
Slack.
Wikipedia photo of someone who's experienced
just a stock photo from this article that I just think is like it's barbed wire wrapped around a bicycle seat, which probably what it felt like. Dan, am I wrong?
Yeah, or it more felt like sitting on like a broomstick. That's what it felt like. But that was about what our bicycle seats looked like. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's a product called, again, I will paste the photo in, called Bum Butter.
I've heard about the Bum Butter,
which you can apply chemosis creams.
Nice.
Help prevent chafing. That's what I'm sure you guys. I saw, again, obviously not the most athletic guy in the world. They did that bit on The Office where they have the fun run, and he puts like the Band-Aids over his nipples because the nipples are going to bleed. I didn't realize that's an actual thing that can happen in a race. And I'm like, oh, that's a funny joke. And then I later learned, like, oh, you can actually chafe your nipples very badly running. Okay. It's a fascinating world we live in.
Yeah, when I visited Colby to see, in part, the Boston Marathon, I was not expecting the amount of blood that I saw on the athletes on the regular.
Right.
So yeah, that is a thing I'll not be doing.
We were at the end too, so it was like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Wow. One thing I am remembering technology related from our biking adventures is that the bike directions in Apple Maps are actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, cool. They were better than Google Maps, and it's not something you appreciate until you end up in the situation. But the biking directions on Apple Maps highlight the elevation change, which actually, now that I think about it, is that just the same thing that the walking directions do?
Maybe they do. I've never noticed.
Makes sense.
Well, I've never really looked at the walking directions. I feel like I just put them on and then I like walk.
Yeah. No, it is different. Yeah, it's really helpful. So Apple Maps. I also use the Apple Maps to drive back from the mountains for my uncle's birthday, and the visualizations that it gives you when you get off the highway now, like we were getting off on some crazy mix master multi-level highway interchange things, and it had like perfectly 3D rendered all the overpasses and underpasses and the exits and exactly what lane you should be in and stuff. That was really cool. Apple Maps, it doesn't suck. They should put that on their website.
It's better
anymore.
Well, don't they now? They now, gosh, I might have misread this. I think they have a web version now.
Yes, I did see that.
Which I haven't actually. I'm going to assume it's just on the website, but I haven't actually tried because why would I just use Google Maps? But
what was the pizza place that had the ad campaign where they're like, "Now our pizza doesn't suck"? Was that Papa John's?
That was Domino's.
Domino's.
Yeah. I remember that because we were in college when they changed the recipe, right?
Yeah.
And it did get better. I mean, it still wasn't good, but it was better.
That had to have been a tough marketing campaign to sign off on, but maybe that's just how
they were desperate. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bold gambit. By the way, I do want to shout out because they commented John, who an old colleague of mine from my last company, who I worked with for many years. Maybe one of my favorite coworkers I've ever worked with. So, John, I hope you're doing well. I don't see you much these days, but
that's
hope you're doing well.
Yeah. And also, a call out to Sean's current coworkers to maybe step it up a little bit. Your performance could improve.
Yeah, of course, at that last company, I didn't do anything, so we were able to hang around and slack off.
Good work-life balance, Sean. Come on.
Yes, when it is all life and no work, that's the best balance.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah. This is probably the least interesting story on planet Earth. 3 years, finally got a new phone. I've upgraded the iPhone. Yeah, can you believe that? It's been way too long. I went from the 12 to the 15 Pro. So I jumped up in the world.
Whoa. Please tell me that the work forced you to do it at this time.
So I got to be honest. I really do have to be honest here. I kicked off the process and got too far into it before I realized this was a stupid time to do it. So I had to follow through. Here's the thing. I don't need the newest phone. I really don't. I've had the 12 for many years. I don't need the newest phone. So I'm not that beat up over it. But I do feel like I know I didn't have to do it right now. It's just the problem is I kicked off the process in like July and it just took this long. And I just didn't. I wasn't thinking. So yes, we will be new iPhones in 2 weeks. So just a little early, unfortunately. But from what I've read, there's really nothing on the new phone that I'm like desperate to have. So, that's the thing when you go from a 12 to a 15, it's like there's so many like MagSafe is new to me. I've never had that. The dynamic island is new to me. The action button's new to me. There's a lot of these things I've never had on a phone before. So,
what's your action?
I started with the flashlight, but I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I gotta feel it out.
We're veering dangerously close to regular show topics, but I'm curious. The reason that I would be excited for a new phone this year would be if, like the was it this phone where they added the Vision Pro video recording on the phone, or was that the last one?
That's a good question.
But I imagine, because they say like, oh, the iPhone 15 Pro, it can do Apple Intelligence, but I have to imagine the next one's going to do it way better, much like how I have to imagine the next phone is going to have much better stereoscopic video. That's the word I was looking for. It'll have much better stereoscopic video than the current one, which I have to imagine was sort of maybe added in at the last second.
Well, that's one of the big changes coming to 16 is the current phone sort of has the triangle cameras, and the new one they're going to be all vertical. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3 vertical, which you're right is exactly for that reason.
Yeah. Wow.
But it doesn't seem like anyone's going to be getting Vision Pros anytime soon, anyways. So,
Womp.
although I took
Well-
I took some, whatever that was yesterday. I made a point to take some, whatever they call it, spatial videos. There we go.
Is that like a
Spatial
setting?
videos of my uncle's dog, so we could have those. Yeah. So when you record a video,
Oh yeah, there's a button here.
Yeah.
Spatial video for Apple Vision Pro. Use spatial video.
And if you there is an app, and I forget what it's called, where you can watch the spatial videos on a whatchamacallit, the Facebook thing. Oculus.
Oh, the
There we go.
Quest.
Yeah, the Quest.
I sold mine on eBay
Right.
because I actually have a use for it. No, that's cool. Oh, here, you want to see a picture of my childhood dog?
Oh, wow, that's a fluffy dog.
Yes, he was. Anyway, not to get distracted. Good. Well, that's I don't have any other
No more
technology
banter?
stuff. No, I mean we do actually have a topic for this evening.
Yes.
We watched a movie. Is this the first official Don't Panic movie watch?
Possibly.
I can't think of another one.
It's never really been our thing, but maybe it will be now. We'll see how we did on this one. If you didn't listen a couple episodes ago, we decided we were going to pick some classic technology-based films from history and watch them. And we began with the 1995 film Hackers, directed by Ian Softly, starring Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie in her first on-screen role, Fisher Stevens as well. Guys, what did you think of the movie?
It did not. Age
It's a
well.
lot. It's a lot.
It did, on the whole, it did not age well. Like the whole, I'll get into like more specific things, but the general, like the whole way the movie worked felt like an old movie structure. It did not feel like a movie structure that is at all interesting today.
See, I'm the other way. You're right. That is an old structure, and I like the old structure. I like that it's kind of predictable and it hits the beats it's supposed to hit. And I find something very comforting in that. So I agree with the overall sentiment, but that's one thing I liked about it.
Definitely wasn't surprising.
No.
I mean, how much of the movie, like on a percentage basis, do you think was like swooping through kind of like weird 3D renderings of computer space?
A lot in the beginning, and a lot in that montage scene where they keep going to the payphones around Manhattan.
Right.
That was
And
a lot of
unleashing their
standing around
viruses.
with weird computer graphics.
Yep.
Which, by the way, those sequences in cyberspace, quote unquote, there's no CGI in any of those. It's all practically shot. They actually built scale models and rotoscoped the camera through them. Those are all real models.
Wow.
I don't know if I believe that, Sean.
Listen, it's what Wikipedia says.
What
Wow.
about what about the ones where it was like the equations?
Those probably. I think there's a difference between animation and CGI. So I think there is some animation, but the actual like computer aidedness of it, I think, was limited.
Got it.
But I mean, I guess my first question to you guys is like, is this what you do at work all day?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're not like, flying around and battling hackers at your big console that somehow none of the buttons are labeled, but you know which ones to hit.
All right.
Yeah. No, so I did make some notes on
I do know a lot of people who have keyboard. Not a lot of people, but like a non-zero number of people who have keyboards that have no labels on them.
Ooh,
that used to be me.
power move. That's a power move.
I used to live that life.
Anyways, sorry, Dan. I interrupted you.
No. I noted down some things that seemed like what, like, not that it held up well, but it, like, references, they're like the bullshit references, like, no, all of the, whenever you were looking at a computer screen, you were almost never, with one exception, looking at a real program. I did see one output of LS that like flashed by Colby in something, but that was the only thing I recognized. Everything else was like made up to make it look, frankly, much more understandable than it actually is, which makes sense. So, and obviously all of this stuff flying around the skyscrapers made of code didn't make any sense. Two things that were very accurate was the well, there's the whole thing where you can like tap on the phone to like send the right signals. That is true. That used to work. The scene where one of them is like emptying out their backpack and it's filled with books. All of those books are real books, some of which people still read today. Or I don't know, maybe like the NSA one wasn't, but like the other like books about programming are all real books. Yeah, but that was pretty much it.
Nice. I feel like,
and the RISC, of course, RISC architecture is going to change everything. Is like, okay, that is a sentence that makes sense. And I don't know if anyone believed that in the 90s, but it certainly did not pan out.
What was RISC architecture?
Reduced instruction set something. It was like, oh, this whole like x86 thing, it's not going to work. The instruction set is too complicated. It's easier. This is my understanding. It's easier to build a faster processor that has fewer instructions.
Got it. Nice. I was going to say, I feel like they did a lot of like, believable or not, they did a lot of like social engineering-y, like, called someone up and convinced them to read them something off the back of their computer or something that was like, yeah, I feel like that's like, that's a real thing. Like going into I mean, there was one scene at the end where someone went into like the office building or the FBI building or something and was pretending to be a repair technician and like put something under some lady's desk, like connected to the phone lines. And like, I remember, I probably talked about it on the show before, when I was like an intern at Facebook, one day there was like a security lockdown, and it was because someone had gotten into the building and like put a USB, was like walking around campus like putting USB drives into computers and stuff. And it turned out that person was on like, they were like a security consultant, like they were on like
trying to get caught.
Right. They were being paid by the company to try and break in, and they had chosen to actually actually break in and be there and like do stuff, which was cool. But that's like, I guess it's real. I guess it's a thing to be concerned about. So
yeah. I thought that it was kind of crazy that they had VR seemed to feature relatively heavily in this movie, which seemed pretty ahead of the time for the mid 90s, because like the early 90s, there was the Virtual Boy and stuff like that. But my memory of the mid 90s is that we had sort of given up on VR by that point. But also, this brings me to a question. So it says in the movie that in 1988, when he was 8 years old, he hacked the 1700 systems or whatever. But when is the movie meant to be taking place? Because now, is it 8 years later? Is it
7 years later on his 18th birthday?
Okay, so 1995, the year that it is released. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that they chose to use VR, because was that even a real VR thing? Was that like a product that you could get at the time?
I don't know. That's actually a good question.
Which brings me brings up another thing. These people did not look like high school students at any point in the movie.
Johnny Lee Miller looked like he was 30.
Is that the main character guy?
Yes, the
Yeah,
actor Johnny
he
Lee
was
Miller.
agreed. I looked it up. He was only 20 when the movie was made, but yeah, he sure did not look 16.
No, that was very funny. But like Matthew Lillard, who played Serial, maybe my favorite character of the movie, he certainly seemed a lot older than a high school student. So
Yes.
yeah, it was funny in that respect.
My favorite character was what was his name? Freak. Was Freak the guy's name? The short guy, like the first guy that he met?
Yes.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, he was cool.
And then I looked him up, and he's never been in anything since, pretty much. I thought he was a great actor.
Pretty much all of the I liked all the characters for the most part. I will say I personally connected most with the uninformed general public characters. Like Wendell Pierce as the police agent, or Lorraine Bracco, who played the executive who was in love with Fisher Stevens, who would just shout things like, in English, please, or,
I always need one of those characters.
I love it. I think at one point, Lorraine Bracco, during the main hacking scene at the end, she goes, rabbits, flu shots? Someone tell me what the hell's going on. She throws out a line like that.
Yeah,
that's my character.
It started so like grounded in reality, like, oh, this is how worms work, and then they just made up a bunch of other shit that no one's ever heard of before.
Oh, it was so that whole scene. And Penn Jillette, by the way, who is awesome as the computer guy. He is so funny because he literally, she goes, in English, please, and he goes, it's a rabbit. It multiplies until it takes over it's like, it's just such gibberish. And I'm thinking back to 1995, right? Which is your average person, your average moving going public does not know much about the internet or computers. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. So you have to explain it in a way that is approachable for a movie audience. And I think this movie does a pretty good job of it. If you knew nothing about technology, I feel like you can get away with understanding this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
I will say, obviously, this movie predicted a lot of things correct about the future. Being a technology movie, obviously everyone in 2024 rollerblades everywhere.
I wrote that down as something that did not hold up. How was it not skateboarding? But I guess that would have been too pedestrian. No pun intended.
I guess it was awesome, man. They were zipping around everywhere. I thought the music was really great. I thought the soundtrack, the score was really great because it did have that sort of techno music sound. And I was listening to it on YouTube before we got on, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. I feel like I'm hacking the planet.
I'm going to listen to that at work tomorrow.
Yeah, man, it's going to hype you up.
I had no idea that was Angelina Jolie until I started looking up actors at the end.
That's right. Her very first film role ever. And fun fact, shortly after finishing shooting this movie, she married Johnny Lee Miller, a.k.a. Zero Cool, where they married for a year and then split. But they did get married.
Wow.
So that chemistry literally leapt off the page.
I did think that one of the things that didn't hold up about this movie was their relationship, though, where it's like, oh, the guy's going to come in and he's so much better than the girl, and she's going to be impressed by that because she's really good too. It's like, But again, at the time, I guess it probably was very revolutionary to have a girl who was a hacker.
It's kind of funny. I think because doing the other show, I've been fortunate to see a lot of these older movies that I had never seen originally. And it is funny. I don't think those things, I just think we're more aware that they happen now. I don't think it's that they're right or they're wrong. It's just we have been trained to look for the fact like, oh, that's obvious. That's a cliche. but I think it generally works in this movie. I mean, there are certain things that are a little like there must have been 14 police raids in this movie. Like they hit everybody at some point, but with like every gun and every guy, swinging in through windows on ropes. It's ridiculous. But at some point, like we're trained today to think that's silly and dumb, but like you could just not have that opinion and just watch it and be like, that's really silly.
That's true. I also noticed the obligatory 90s movie giant car crash that happens at the end. And then they get to say this was the largest car crash ever on film, and it cost X millions of dollars in Ford Focuses or whatever.
And then we just ignore the fact that characters just killed a bunch of people in changing all the traffic lights, and we just brush by it like it wasn't a thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's too funny. Let's see. What else about this one?
The underwater credit sequence was very weird, and it reminded me of like their Nirvana cover album, and I was wondering if that was like, was that of the time?
That's a good question.
Nirvana famous album cover, yes, with the baby. Yes, thank you. Never mind. 1991.
There you go. Now, you guys are obviously smart computer guys. Let me ask you your opinion on the villain's plan in this movie. So we've got the Plague, played by the wonderful Fisher Stevens, who's such a joy in this movie, really chewing the scenery.
Yeah, he was
being a real slime ball. But his plan is he creates the Da Vinci computer virus. But it's actually a cover. He has a worm that's been siphoning off money from this Ellingson company, and he's going to use the Da Vinci virus to distract the company by capsizing the company's oil tanker fleet to distract while he's taking the $25 million and going on the run, thereby causing a massive ecological disaster. Good plan?
No, I was thinking that this movie got kind of close to something that actually happened that I think we covered on the show, the Ubiquity hack that it turns out wasn't a hack. It was an inside job. And then he was extorting his own company, but actually he was the hacker on the other side. Like, I thought that would have been a more clever thing, but then there would have been no reason to hack the planet and rouse all the hackers. So I guess it has to serve the plot.
Yeah, I did. There was, again, and you talked about Stan, I'm willing to let a lot of like bad logic go because I just wanted to enjoy the movie. But the idea of the tankers are satellite controlled, there's nothing we can do to override them, even that was a step too far in my logic. Like in 1995, you automated your oil tankers to the point where you have no control over them.
Yeah, they could have added a line where, one of the characters is like, but we only did that because you told us to.
Yeah,
and look how much money you saved, or something like that.
Yeah, that I was like,
It does seem like if you were the computer security person for the company, and you wanted to steal a bunch of money, you could cover your tracks in a quieter way than sinking oil tankers.
Yeah, I think Office Space did this better. Ultimately.
Yes. Although did he get the money in the end of Office Space? I don't.
No, he didn't. He just becomes a construction worker.
Right. Yeah. Again, another logic leap where Serial hacks every screen on the planet to show his little video explaining who the villain is and the plot of the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Wild. Let's see.
Oh, well, I learned that the Cookie Monster program was real. I'm reading on.
Oh.
And yeah, you had to type cookie and it would go away. If you typed Oreo, it went away for longer.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because he shouts at that's what he shouts at Penn Jillette. Just type. What's the? Actually, I think it was in the because I'm on the IMDb quotes page, which does have some. type cookie, you idiot. And he shouts at Penn Jillette, which, like, okay, sure.
Oh, interesting. Only made $7.6 million at the box office. That would be a real movie league flop. But The Net, starring Sandra Bullock, came out the same year and grossed $50 million.
Yeah, she's a much bigger box office draw. Yeah, this movie has a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. Siskel and Ebert at the time, Ebert gave the film a thumbs up, while Gene Siskel gave it a thumbs down.
What did Ebert like about it? I'm curious.
Let's see if it says here. It doesn't say. Gene Siskel said, "I didn't find the characters that interesting, and I really didn't like the villain in this piece. I thought Fisher Stevens was not very threatening." So there you go. I was going to look and see what was Johnny Lee Miller doing before this. Was this his first movie role? Yeah, this was his first major movie role. He would go on to star in Train Spotting, maybe his other major movie he's known for. Yeah, so a lot of first time actors.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Because we're going to see more technology movies, I think, here in the future. So we got to score it.
Yeah.
Because all opinion can be quantified. So let's see, on what scale could we rate Hackers?
So I think we should decide on the criteria
that
we're going to rate these movies on.
Bring it on.
I'm just going to say a bunch of things, and we can decide which one of these things we like. We could, score it on how good of a movie it is, and we could break that down into but I think just how good of a movie it is maybe where to leave it. And then there's the historical significance aspect, maybe, or there's a better word for that. The legacy impact. Because so anyways, those are two things that I could imagine us going on. Are there others?
I would say, I think we should rate it as a movie, but we should rate it as a technological exercise.
Okay. Oh, right. We can have accuracy, tech accuracy as a category.
But I think it's accuracy, but I also think there's an element, because some of these movies do have a fantasy element, it's not meant to be realistic. And so I think it's rating, I don't know, how well they use technology, or how it works into the plot, or how enjoyable the technology. I feel like there's some angle there.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I like that. So, how good of a movie it is, how well it represents technology, maybe we'll say. It doesn't need to be accurate, it just needs to be a good depiction. It could teach you something about it.
How, the film was setting out to prove technology in a certain way. Did it accomplish it?
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just because of this first movie we watched, but the legacy component for me, there are a lot of quotes that I did not realize were from this movie that people say all the time, at least in tech circles. So this movie at least felt significant, but maybe the other one.
All right. Well, let's do those three then.
Okay.
And let's start with the technology piece. So let's give it on a 1 to 10 scale, or we could do it in binary. We could do it from a 0 to 1 scale.
I'm curious to hear people's opinions on we know that it wasn't accurate, but did it teach people things about technology?
It's a highly subjective score. I think what I'm thinking about is, did it translate technology to the audience? And because I get, if I'm rating this for accuracy, it's a 0, it's useless. But I do think as a piece of technology in a mass market film, it's relatively successful. It captures your attention. You get the gist of it. There's enough in there that's interesting, funny at parts. You're able to follow it. So I think it was relatively successful in that attempt. I would give it a 7. But you score it how you feel appropriate. Colby, what do you think on the technology side?
I think I would give it a 5 for the reasons I mentioned, because most of the actual computer stuff was garbage, but I feel like there was truth to the human bridgy parts of the computer stuff.
Fair enough. Makes sense. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, let's see. The things that were accurate were, I agree with Colby. The human computer interface bits still seem relevant. There were winks and nods to various things that are real. I give it a 4. Because like when they were doing stuff with computers, they never even showed writing any code. Like I think that would have bumped it up to a 5 or a 6 for me, but like that wasn't even.
You didn't like the random formulas floating around in space?
And like it was just a bunch of circles with lines between them. Like I wish that was what programming was like.
That's very fair. That's very fair. Now, Dan, you were talking about, why don't you start on Legacy here, because you were diving into that.
Yeah. Yeah, the hack the planet thing is a thing that people say all the time. And I think, though, that we're going to have to rescore this category in particular as we watch the movies. I can't think. The only other movie I can think of that people still talk about for technology is the one. Well, there's the I Can't Do That, Dave. What is that? 1001 Space Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one War Games. And this.
Yes. Do you want to play a game?
Yes. And so I don't know. I'll give it like an 8 or a 9 on that so far.
Yeah, very fair. What about you, Colby?
I don't. Are there any other things that people say from this, Dan?
Yeah, I thought there was something else. I don't know. Maybe not. Mess with the best, die like the rest. Is that does that come from this movie?
Yes. Well, yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard anyone say hack the planet.
All right, that's fair.
You're not hanging around with the rough people like Dan does.
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe the people I know just can't hang, but yeah, I guess I'm gonna give it a 0.
Damn! Wow.
This feels like a very binary choice. Like,
I love it. I think it's a great way to approach it. I think Dan was thinking in a more global sense. Cody's like, no, me specifically.
Who knows? I guess maybe being a little more generous. They did have some crazy VR stuff, and maybe all those Oculus Quest developers are watching this and thinking like, wow. So maybe I'll give it a 3. How about that?
Fair enough. A reasonable base score. I think from a technology perspective, you guys covered that. I think from a cultural perspective, this has become a bit of a cult classic. And when you look at the fashion, and you look at the music, and you look at the feel of even rollerblading and some of these things we talk about, they're a bit cliche now, but they have stuck in the cultural consciousness. This feels like some representation of some portion of the time it was from. And maybe you can't point to specific things, but the overall look and feel and attitude of the movie is extremely strong. And as I was watching it, despite the fact I've never seen the movie, it's felt familiar. So to me, that's the ultimate sign of a legacy. So to me, this is like an 8 or a 9. Like, not for specifics, but for capturing an essence of a time.
Sure.
Yeah, I forgot about the costumes and stuff were very striking and interesting. Like, that didn't feel generic or played out at all.
It was a good looking movie. Oh yeah, the hacker lounge and the graffiti everywhere, and then there was a ramp in there for rollerblading for some reason. It was a cool looking movie. So I appreciate that. And then last is is scoring the film overall. Did you enjoy it? Colby, why don't you start this one?
I enjoyed it. So there is one problem with my new TV, and the problem with the new TV is that certain kinds of music are very loud, like in relation to all other sounds. Inexplicably, I don't know why, but techno music, like electronic, like techno-y music, is one of those types of music. So it gets like a small ding for being very annoying, because every time it was like a really intense hacking sequence, there was like weird techno music and it got incredibly loud. But otherwise, I liked it. I think I'd give it a 7. I had a fun time watching it.
No, it's very solid. It's a good score. Excellent. What about you, Dan?
I think for me, yeah, I was kind of bored by the movie. It was fun to look at, which is a thing that I really care about in movies because it's a visual medium. But the plot wasn't very interesting, and there were some like dated things and some things that I felt like were a little weird, like Sean, your favorite character, like it seemed like he was the butt of a joke for being weird, but hackers love weird people, and so like that felt a little out of place. I give it a 6 or a 7. I give it a 6 to be different.
Okay, very reasonable. I enjoyed this movie immensely. It was fun. It wasn't perfect. It was silly in parts. But what I look for out of a movie is fun. And I think I smiled the whole way through it. So to me, that's a success. I like the actors. I like the characters. I like the sets. It really wasn't much for me to point at and be like, that sucked, or that didn't work. So overall, I call it successful. So for me, this is like that 7-8 mark. I'd put it in there as well. The highest praise I can give a movie is I will watch it again, which I almost never do with movies. I'm not a rewatcher. This is like borderline rewatchable for me. I don't know if I will, but I would consider it. Like if it were on cable. By the way, Ready Player One has been on like TNT on a loop for the last like 3 years. And so for some reason, that movie is weird. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. It's just odd. But God damn it, if I don't put it on and watch 10 minutes of it in snippets every time it's on, I would rewatch Hackers in 10-minute increments with commercials. Actually, Ready Player One would be a good one for us to watch for this. That would be interesting, because I would argue that it's a shit plot with a terrible script, but it is one of the best looking movies. That movie shot so, and it's Spielberg. It's shot so incredibly. It just looks good, which is why I can watch it on mute on cable. All right. Well, that sounded pretty successful overall, I would say. A good start.
Yeah, this was a strong start.
Certainly.
The question is, where do we go from here?
That's a great question. It could be fun to watch The Net.
Yes.
As a comparison.
Yes, certainly the more mainstream popcorn action film counterpart to this sort of...
Yeah, the other ones I put on the list are 2001: A Space Odyssey and War Games are the other ones I can think of.
And there are others, but that's definitely a great starting list.
What ones can you think of?
I would throw in Swordfish. With John Travolta from 2001. Has a lot of over-the-top hacking scenes.
Wow, never heard of it.
If we're including bad movies, The Lawnmower Man would be one. Same with Johnny Mnemonic. I actually think would be a lot of fun, because there's a lot of weird future technology stuff in that. What else?
The Lawnmower Man. That looks weird.
It is bananas. Your mind will melt. So that could be fun. And And then we can get really into the dregs, which I kind of do want to watch some of the very bad ones. Have you ever heard of Extends?
No.
That is
Johnny
right up there.
Mnemonic looks fun. Wow.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves. It's in the future. It's not safe to transmit information, so instead they put it in the brain of a courier, and that's the hard drive, and he's got to transport it. Action tech thriller. That could be fun.
I'm down for that. That one sounds interesting.
Yeah, well, let's do Johnny Mnemonic is definitely different than Hackers, that's for sure. I think that could be a hoot. All right. It's been decided. We'll do that.
Amazing.
Awesome. Good. Well, anything else, gentlemen, before we stick a pin in this one?
Nope. Let's stick it.
Stuck it. Guys, I got to plug the other show a little bit. Up for Debate. We got a lot of great stuff going on. We have an episode coming out this week where we continue our Chrono Trigger adventures. And this time the game actually works and we make progress, which is fun. Finally, I got all the tech stuff working. It took long enough. And coming up, and I need to talk to you guys when we're done with the stream, Sean Timber is back. And this year's theme, it is Up for the Eats, a month of culinary exploration, including hopefully an episode with you guys on where I'm going to send you some food and we're going to talk about it. So schedules, if we can align them, that'll be a lot of fun. And lots of other food-themed episodes as well that month. So that's coming up. That's going to be a lot of fun over at UpForDebate.tv or wherever you get podcasts. Be sure to check that out. Of course, our show is at don'tpanic.io. It's a great website. The audio, the video, all the episodes are there, and information on how to subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Just search for Don't Panic with the video version on YouTube. We're live Monday nights, right around 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on our Facebook page, on our Twitch page at twitch.tv/don'tpanicshow. And I think we're also live on our YouTube channel. I don't know if that works, but we're definitely in different places. And of course, you get a hold of us, don'tpanicshow@gmail.com. But we're going to wrap it up here because these guys have more movies to go watch. So on behalf of Dan and Colby, I'm Sean. We appreciate you being here. We're going to see you next time for another great edition of Don't Panic.